I think making paintings is a journey because I'm definitely a process painter. Like I'll start with one idea and then it will turn out to be something quite different, but it's the actual act of doing which really informs me and helps me to figure out the painting. So it's sort of a glimmer of an idea at the beginning and then it really forms when I'm actually making the work. I tend to block in first with acrylic and then work on top with oil. And often the colours I start with are totally different to what it will be by the end because you can only realise what the next colour needs to be once you've put the other one in. I think I'm quite picky with what I paint on and what I paint with. I tend to paint on board just because I like how you can put a lot more pressure onto the painting. I find canvas quite bouncy, whereas board you can just sort of scrape into a lot and use a lot more pressure on it and a bit more force. And I think that's the thing with my paintings, when you're actually up close to them, you see that there's a lot of texture going on. I don't always do faces this way, but I wanted them to be very sort of free and quick. And you can then scrape back a bit of the varnish. And this section needs to come off. Maybe this section. It always transforms the painting, it's quite exciting. It feels like it kind of comes alive, and I don't do it with all the paintings, because I think some of the figures are best left slightly more subtle. I think the way that it's just one figure, I think that's when it really works. This is just a whole pile of images and photographs which I look at quite a lot for inspiration. In quite a short space of time I won 2 travel awards. So the first one was a residency in Florence, which is the John Kinross Travel Award. Everything was so ornate and decorative. Just being in one place for such a long time, you definitely soak up what's around you without even realising it. The second award was the Alexander Graham Munro Travel Award. Well, this is a nice sketch. I spent 2 months travelling around Peru and Bolivia, which was really inspiring. It's nice actually when you're away and you have less materials. It's quite nice to work quickly and just use watercolour or whatever's around. And I think I used Tipex here. It was just whatever I had around really. And I had to stick together 4 bits of paper. It's funny when you do something and you think it's not really important, but then actually it does sort of tie into your work and you end up getting something from it. When I was in Florence and South America, I would spend a lot of time sitting and drawing in churches. I love all the peculiar looking people on the walls and the pattern. It's so ornate and decorative, and I think that really comes into my work. This is some amazing stonework which I saw in a church. And this kind of figure really came into one of my paintings actually, with the hands up. I like that a lot. This kind of fine pattern leaves, I've actually used in one of my paintings. I did a lino cut of some leaves and I did a repeated pattern. This is one of the churches, I think this was in Cusco, which I sat in for quite a long time and sketched in there. I love the way they would illustrate saints, and also the stories to do with saints. I find quite interesting as well. And obviously both Italy and South America are such religious places, so it was a huge theme all the time. Sometimes I like to use letters or words in paintings. The colours I use are quite subtle, so it's not really standing out, it's never the main focus. I feel like the people are normally the main focus of my paintings. I think I'm always trying to make them look quite peaceful and quite serene. There's an energy in them in that they're quite bright, but also this sort of calmness, which I like. I love having animals in paintings and mythological creatures, but I like to sort of make them up myself. I think imagination is quite important for me. When I paint something and I'm surprised about what I've actually done, I kind of didn't expect myself to make that, then that's when I feel quite excited about painting and I think it might be quite good, which is always a nice feeling.